inappropriate. There was nothing that, as far as we know, that would lead anyone to believe that there was anything except for a discussion about adoption of the Majinsky Act.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube.
You know, Sean Spicer became very much a household name in a short period of time, became a bit of a celebrity, perhaps for all the wrong reasons. I want to play for folks just a few of his greatest hits.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even General Flynn was a volunteer of the campaign. And then obviously there's been discussion of Paul Manafort, who played a very limited role for a very limited amount of time. But you had someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons. He brought him into the Holocaust Center. I understand that. Well, obviously I was really trying to make sure that we talked about the Assad's actions against some people using chemical weapons. To draw any kind of comparison to the Holocaust was inappropriate. There was nothing that, as far as we know, that would lead anyone to believe that there was anything except for a discussion about adoption of the Majinsky Act.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
Photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. I can sense the love in the room. Yes, I believe that we have to be honest with the American people. I think sometimes we can disagree with the facts. I mean, just the other day, he sat down with Martin Luther King Jr. I would call him a civil rights leader.
So his dad was the third.
Well, I think you get 1 point. That's a ridiculous. You're basically. Okay, Kristen, we're going to end this right now. Hunter, no. And then this one is I've got the 13 here as well, or the 2017. It is literally 100% the same. Well, first of all, it's not a travel ban. He's using the words that the media is using. But at the end of the day, it can't. Hold on. It can't be. It can't be.
The president himself called it a ban.
I understand.
Is he confused, or are you confused?
No, I'm not confused. I mean, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Okay, this is silly. Okay, next. Okay, you don't get to just yell out questions. We're going to raise our hand like big boys and girls. This is government. This is not. And I think that part of the reason the visual is important is that when you actually look at the difference, you realize this is what big government does.
I was going to say, your beat's upside down.
John Roberts always helping with the fashion tips.
But it's still upside down.
Don't make me make the podium move. Cover the stuff. No, hold on.
No evidence of wiretapping and Trump. Now you've had the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee.
No, actually, here's this quote, Jonathan. No, here's the direct quote. I think it's very possible, end quote. When we talked about wiretapping, he meant surveillance. Well, no, you're coming to some serious conclusions for a guy that has zero intelligence class. If you don't want to answer the question, I can call on somebody else. Thank you.
Does the president still have complete confidence in FBI Director Comey?
There's no reason to believe he doesn't at this time. But even General Flynn was a volunteer of the campaign. And then obviously there's been discussion of Paul Manafort, who played a very limited role.
White House aware of any contacts between Paul Manafort and Russian operatives, suspected Russian operatives?
No.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, first, I think your headlines are bad. I'm glad to rewrite. I'd be glad to if you guys are looking for some help. I'm for a job.
Does the president stand by his statement that President Obama is a bad or sick guy?
I think the president's tweets stand for themselves. I think there's a huge appetite for tax reform. No, we don't have that. You've got Russia. If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection. I'm sorry that disgusts you. You're shaking your head. I appreciate it, but understand this, that at some point the facts are what they are. And every single person who has been briefed on this situation with respect to the situation with Russia, Republican, Democrat, Obama appointee, career, have all come to the same conclusion. At some point, April, you're going to have to take no for an answer with respect to whether or not there was collusion. April.
Well, thank you, Sean.
How are you today?
I'm fine, and how are you?
Fantastic. The answer is that if you gas a baby, if you put a barrel bomb in to innocent people, I think you will see a response from this president. That is unacceptable. Someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even think to using chemical weapons. There's an opportunity. Can I just? I think I got this, but thank you. Maybe. All right, thanks, man. I'll see you in a minute. Hold on. All right, that was cool.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Sean.
What about the political? Sean, sit right here, wait. Don't sit, let's see, sit. No one leave, sit, wait, let's see. Sit and wait, let's see. We're not
Considering canceling the daily press briefings.
I think he's a little dismayed, as well as a lot of people, that we come out here and try to do everything we can to provide you and the American people with what he's doing on their behalf, and yet we see time and time again an attempt to parse every little word and make it more of a game of gotcha, as opposed to really figure out what the policies are, why something's being pursued, or what the update is on this. And I think that's where there's a lot of dismay, and I don't think it's something that's just alone the president feels. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Did you always tell the truth from the podium?
To the best of my ability. Absolutely.
Did the president ever ask you to lie or to manipulate the truth?
No.
Front and center for the tumultuous first 6 months of the Trump administration, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer.
I walked out every day with the facts that I could gather that I had at the time and tried to do it the best I could every day.
It was a contentious relationship from the get-go. Spicer setting the tone by chastising the press corps about the crowd size at President Trump's inauguration.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
The photographic evidence was contradictory.
I think it might have been better to be a lot more specific with what we were talking about in terms of the universe, and not focus so much on photographic evidence, etc. So, yes, from that standpoint, I think I could have probably had more facts at hand and been more articulate in describing, the entirety of what that day was about.
Did the president ask you to defend the crowd size, or was that your idea?
He didn't ask me to defend it. I think he wanted to make sure that we set the record straight, because again, people were looking at photographs, making vast judgments as to how many people were attending.
A rocky start that never seemed to improve.
I'm sorry, please stop shaking your head again. Okay, you don't get to just yell out questions. We're going to raise our hand like big boys and girls. I mean, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Okay, I'm done. This is silly. Okay, next.
Spicer stands by his work in the White House.
Sometimes we can disagree with the facts.
You said, quote, if you lose the respect and trust of the press corps, you've got nothing. Do you feel that you lost the trust of the press corps?
Some of them. But again, I know...
Do you understand why?
In some cases I do. But again, I also think that it's amazing what a one-way street it is.
Perhaps the most famous and infamous press secretary in recent history, even portrayed on Saturday Night Live by Melissa McCarthy.
Now, I'd like to begin today by apologizing on behalf of you to me.
And having a demanding boss didn't make Spicer's job any easier.
Let's just talk about President Trump. Some of the statements, some of the tweets, the veracity has definitely been challenged. Was he ever tough to defend?
He has always said, and he means it, and he's right, that he's always his best spokesperson. He knows what he wants to say, how to say it.
That makes it tough for a spokesperson.
Sure it does, absolutely. No one said this was going to be easy. I knew what I was getting into.
Did you really, though?
No, I mean, no one knows until you take the job, the scrutiny and a lot of the other stuff that comes in with it. So I would probably argue the stress level. Donald Trump's been the same individual for 71 years. I knew who he was, how he communicated, and it all came with the job.
You said one of the challenges of being press secretary is the president felt he's his best spokesman.
Right.
Did he ever, I would imagine he probably at times guided you on what he wanted you to say.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Marching orders. He's the boss.
He's the boss. I mean, again, I think that you got to remember what the role of the job. I mean, the job is to speak on his behalf and to share with the press corps and the American people what the president's thinking. And so the first rule is to make sure that I'm getting that right from him.
His stint in the White House was marked by a string of controversies.
Let's talk about one other serious allegation, the travel ban. You said that it unequivocally wasn't a travel ban. President Trump, as you know, tweeted, "This is a travel ban no matter what anybody says." Why did you never correct that?
I would definitely say that I wish we had been more consistent from the beginning in terms of the terms that we would use and the goals that we were trying to achieve.
So you own that you would like a do-over on that?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll take a mulligan on
You'll
that.
take a mulligan on that one.
And of course, the unexpected firing of FBI Director James Comey.
Breaking developments. The fallout now after the firing of FBI Director James Comey.
Terminated by President Trump with this letter. Comey was leading the investigation over Trump's campaign in Russia.
And there were contradicting stories as to why Comey had been let go.
The president, over the last several months, lost confidence in Director Comey.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey. This Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse.
Once you learned the truth behind what was really going on, why didn't you set the record straight? Because as press secretary, you don't think that you have an obligation as press secretary to set the record straight, though.
Why he set it straight. That's my job, is to help give voice to what his thinking is when he can't do it himself. In that case, he did it himself.
That firing led to the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller.
Let's talk about the Russia issue, which seems to be plaguing the presidency. Has the Mueller team reached out to you at all?
I'm not going to discuss that issue at all.
Have you hired a lawyer?
I'm not going to discuss that issue at all.
So you haven't been subpoenaed?
I'm not going to discuss that issue at all.
Did you ever hear inside the White House that Mueller should be fired?
I'm not going to discuss that issue at all.
If you are approached, will you testify?
The White House has been very clear that they're going to be as cooperative as possible.
You're not under the auspices of the White House anymore.
I understand that, but I would do anything. There's an issue of executive privilege, and as long as that's not invoked, I will do everything to further, to do my part to further this investigation coming to a swift conclusion.
Through it all, Spicer weathered the political storms until Anthony Scaramucci was named the new communications director.
Was his hiring the impetus for leaving?
Yes.
Why?
I've known Anthony for a while, not close, but Anthony wanted to be involved in the administration in some capacity. He had been a strong advocate for the president and wanted a position. I just don't think that he had the skill set and the qualifications in the background to play a leading role crafting the communications message and team. I did not think that I would work well with them.
Scaramucci lasted only 10 days. Spicer, another month. He is now evaluating new offers and even made a cameo at the Emmy Awards.
This will be the largest audience to witness an Emmys, period.
Have you spoken with the president about your cameo?
I have.
And what did he say?
He was very supportive. He thought I did a great job. It was very reassuring.
Some argue that the reason you did it is because this is step one in trying to rehab your image.
I feel very good with my image. I'm very happy with myself. I am able to go out and explain a lot of things now, but I'm not on a tour. I'm out having some fun.
It might be fun for Spicer, but for his many critics, it is too soon to celebrate someone who they believe has not been honest with the American people.
People have hard feelings towards you because they feel that you lied to the American people. Have you ever lied to the American people?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I'm cheating on my taxes.
Unequivocally, you can say no?
Again, you want to find something. I have not knowingly done anything to to do that, no.
Any regrets about the combative relationship with the press corps?
I've made mistakes, there's no question, I think we all do. Some of them I tried to own very publicly. In some cases, there were things that I did that until someone brought it up, I said, gosh, I didn't realize that was a mistake, I'm sorry about that. But to watch some of the personal attacks, questioning my integrity, questioning my, what my intentions were, I think we're really over the top.
But to his detractors, there is still unfinished business.
So many Americans feel they deserve an apology from Sean Spicer. Are they ever going to get one?
I think that there are things that I did during my time there that I needed to go out and correct. I did that. Where there were mistakes that were made, that I got something wrong, I think I've owned that. I know that there are some folks that no matter what we say or do, everything that we did was wrong and want some blanket apology. That's not happening.
Hey, thank you.
For Nightline, I'm Paula Ferris in Alexandria, Virginia.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
Trump White House, Sean Spicer, probably did not think that role would propel him into the spotlight quite as much as it did. But his often rocky relationship with the press, especially during his daily briefings, led to some memorable TV moments for him and some unforgettable late-night impersonations for us. Watch. On President Trump's first full day in office, it was Press Secretary Sean Spicer getting a lot of the attention.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period. We'd like to take a few of your questions. John.
Spicer quickly developed a contentious relationship with the media.
I think the president made it clear what his position is.
That's not my question.
I understand that because that's what the president's position is.
Settle down! Settle down!
Saturday Night Live immediately pounced on his demeanor at the podium.
Now I'd like to begin today by apologizing on behalf of you to me for how you have treated me these last 2 weeks. And that apology is not accepted. I'm here to swallow gum, and I'm here to take nade.
Back in Washington, the press corps would regularly spar with Spicer over his interpretation of facts.
I think sometimes we can disagree with the facts.
He would often fend off questions about the Russia investigation.
If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection.
And he later apologized for these remarks when talking about chemical weapons in Syria.
Someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even think to using chemical weapons.
After resigning from his post, Spicer himself got in on the joke, surprising crowds at the Emmy Awards.
This will be the largest audience to witness an Emmys, period.
Finally poking fun at himself after months of being the brunt of the joke.
The press interview is over!
Sean Spicer has a new book out. It comes out Tuesday. It's called The Briefing, and Sean is with us now. Sean, welcome to you.
Thank you, I think.
It must feel good to laugh about that.
Let's just put it this way. I'd rather be sitting in this chair than standing behind a podium.
Yes, of course, right? I mean, do you look at Sarah Huckabee Sanders with empathy, or what do you feel when you watch her up there doing it now?
Having been there and know what it takes to do that on a daily basis, obviously Sarah's a great friend, and I have a lot of admiration for what she does in the sense that it takes a lot of preparation on a daily basis to get ready to do that.
Yeah, critics would say it takes an ability to disassociate from the truth.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that.
Yeah. So let's go back to the thing that started the problems for you, which you detail in the book, and it's actually an interesting backstory. How you got called in there, you weren't expecting to do a briefing, you weren't wearing your best suit, but Trump wanted you to
today with a much better.
You look very dapper.
Thank you.
President Trump wanted you to get out there and fight the narrative about the inauguration crowd sizes, and they weren't as big as Obama's, and Trump didn't like that. And here is what Sean did that got him in trouble.
Photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. Inaccurate numbers involving crowd size were also tweeted. No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times...
No, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And, I mean, do you acknowledge that now? That was not true.
If I could have a do-over, I would take it.
Do you acknowledge that that was not true?
Well, first of all, what I said on that...
No, hold on. Hold on.
Because
was that true or was that not true?
What I said was the totality of the people who watched it online and everywhere.
No, you didn't. We all heard you just said. You said ever, including in person.
In person or around the globe.
Both.
Right, both combined.
No.
No, should I look?
In person and around the globe.
Correct.
So was that true or was it? So you're still standing by it?
No, I'm saying that I could have done that a heck of a lot better. But the point was is that what we were conflating was the number of people standing in one position versus what I was trying to do, and admittedly not well. Like I'm not sitting, but
and not truthfully.
But no, the number of people who watched it live on Twitter. Come on. You know what? Look, here's the point. That was the highest rated live Twitter event that ever occurred. The website traffic was through the roof.
The number of people on the National Mall did not compare to the number that showed up for Barack Obama.
You're asking what I
correct.
said.
Yes.
Correct.
You admit that.
But what I was trying to do was to say, okay, the number of people that witnessed it, including the platforms that didn't exist 8 years prior.
Yeah, but you went on to talk about the number of people who rode the metro in to see it, and you had those facts wrong too.
If you're asking me, would I have liked to have done that all over? Absolutely. There is no one save my wife, God bless her, and my mom, who thought I did and I don't even think they did an okay job. They just said it to make me feel better.
But here's
there was nobody. The president himself calls me right afterwards and was like, what were you thinking?
No, because the president went out there and said we caught the media in a lie when talking about his crowd size. So he was with you in what you said.
No, he wasn't. He called me right afterwards.
And why did he say publicly we caught the media in a lie?
All I'm telling you is that as far as what I did and what you're asking me about, my accountability, I screwed that day up by all accounts. It saved nobody.
Yeah. See, the reason you did is because he called you in there and told you to do it.
Here's what happened. On Friday night, on Friday, the president gets inaugurated at noon. We go down to the White House. The president kicks off the day by signing a series of executive orders and executive actions to show the American people that he's getting to work right away.
All right.
He's keeping
but then he's watching cable news and he sees truth and gets upset.
With all due respect, please let me finish. Let's
get to the part where he called you in and told you to go out there.
We brought the press corps in to witness the president getting down to work. What happens? They tweet out a false story, an racially inflammatory story that the president has removed the bust of Martin Luther King.
Right.
That sets off the night. Correct. So thank you. That was false. We spend a good chunk of that evening cleaning that up because for a lot of people, once they saw that, they thought that the bell had rung and we had to go out there and make it very clear that that wasn't in fact true.
I'm not going to argue with you. Listen. I'm not going to argue with you that the media has reported numerous things about President Trump that are false, and when they're to his detriment, they love it even more.
Right.
But right now, I don't have them sitting here. I have you.
Right.
And what you said there wasn't true, and your boss said the same thing.
And what I'm saying to you is that you have to understand the mindset. Then he wakes up the next morning and he sees all of these panel discussions talking about crowd size, and he gets upset that I think after winning an election as he did, where everybody was against us in terms of talking about whether we had the ability to win, they criticized the campaign, the structure.
You're trying to justify the misleading now, as opposed to just
not true.
Apologize for.
No, I'm actually saying I said if I could have done this over, I talk extensively in the book about several of the instances that you played on that tape and say this is where I could have done a much better job. I know,
but we've moved on from you to him. He's the one who told you to go out there. But he's the one who told you to go out there. You're very defensive of him on this point. You know as well as I do that President Trump is the one who wanted the inauguration crowd sizes restated.
No, I'm sorry. I'm taking responsibility for my actions. I went out there. I said those words. I could have done a better job.
Yeah.
And that's what I am responsible for what I did.
I got it. But you work for somebody who controls what you did, and you're honest about that in the book as well. We're going to pick it up on the opposite side of this break with the president's commitment to the truth and or lack thereof, and that SNL parody. You all know what I'm talking about. We're back now with former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, who is out with a new memoir called The Briefing, about his time working for President Trump and his upbringing and his background in politics. I want to pick it up on the subject of President Trump's honesty, because I heard you tell Savannah that you believe he's a truthful man.
No.
You believe he's a truthful man.
Well, look, I know in his own books he talks about hyperbole. He's a salesman. He's a businessman. He's always trying to make everything sound like the best. That's been his career in sales and as a real estate developer and a TV mogul. I think he's never sat in front of me and lied to my face or told me to go do anything.
But that doesn't mean he hasn't told
any
lies.
But I'm not...
Just because the lie was not to your face doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Okay.
No, Sean, I mean, you're obviously dodging. I mean, why can't you just admit that he struggles with the truth?
I think he sells he sells his policies and his achievements and his results. And that's who he is.
This isn't selling. These are non-truths, to be charitable. Wisconsin hasn't been won by a Republican since 1952. That's from President Trump. Nixon won it twice. Reagan won it twice.
88.
Since Reagan, no administration has been able to get tax cuts. Actually, we had tax cuts under Clinton, George W. Bush, very famously, and Barack Obama. The Electoral College vote that I got was the biggest since Reagan. Not true. George H.W. Bush's was bigger than his, so was Clinton's, so was Obama's. I had a very, very smooth rollout of the travel ban. What? Even you admit that's not true in your book. 122 prisoners were released by Obama from Gitmo. Not true. 113 were released by Bush. Claims he never said that Russia meddled in the election. He told Time magazine in December 2016, I don't believe Russia interfered. I could go on.
And again, I think there's several areas where he's used his hyperbole to...
No, that's not hyperbole.
I get it.
Those are not truthful statements.
Okay, and you know what? I've made mistakes myself. I think we've all done them. That's all, I mean...
Those are mistakes.
Right, but I'm not accountable for every single thing that anybody else has said but
I know, but you're accountable for saying you think he's a truthful person.
That's what I believe.
Okay.
I think, no, look, hold on. I do think, he, like everybody else, makes mistakes. I think that...
Those are all mistakes.
They are mistakes, but I think we all make them. And I think that there's had a level of intensity and scrutiny on this administration that has been absent a lot of times in the past.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
I agree with you. But I feel very comfortable having this discussion with you because I was out on the air night after night on Obama. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. Those were lies too. And I called him out on those, and I'm calling out President Trump on his lies as well.
But and I think to the degree that, as I said in the last statement, we're all accountable for what we say. I'm accountable for my words, for what I've said, whether it's on behalf of, when I've gone out personally to suggest something. And if you came back with a series of things that I've said, I'll take accountability.
Yeah, but you worked for Trump. I mean, you can't distance yourself from President Trump and say, I'm only taking responsibility. You were his press secretary.
Right.
You were his mouthpiece.
Correct.
And if he told you to lie, you were comfortable doing it?
But that's why in the book, I walk through those seminal moments in the campaign and the transition in the White House and talk about areas where, you mentioned the travel ban. I think we could have done a much better job of rolling that out, about communicating effectively, coordinating it through the whole of government experience.
What did you think when you saw him in Helsinki stand up and say, I don't see any reason why it would be Russia that
I was glad to see him.
I know you were glad when he walked it back, but what did you think when he said that next to Vladimir Putin?
I thought he better make sure that he clears this up.
Because why?
Because I think there's a difference between allegations, which we've seen nothing so far, of collusion, and meddling in the election, which I know he is aware of because we've been briefed on that extensively. It's gone on for decades. This is not unique to this administration. Russia and other countries have tried to meddle with the United States' elections for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. And so you believe him that it was a misstatement, that he meant to make it a double?
You know what, Megan, it's almost been a year since I left the White House. I've stopped focusing on every press conference and thing.
Oh, come on. This was national news that dominated every paper, every news.
I don't know. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying you're asking my opinion. I'm glad that he...
And I'm asking whether you believe him, that he was misspeaking.
If he says he was, then sure.
Okay.
I mean, I don't... I don't know what was going on. I wasn't there. And to sit here and say...
Neither was I. I'm able to draw a conclusion because I've had 47 years on this earth.
He went out and clarified it. I'm glad he did.
Okay. We still have to get to Melissa McCarthy and much, much more. We'll do that next.
Now, I'd like to begin today by apologizing on behalf of you to me for how you have treated me these last 2 weeks. And that apology is not accepted. Because I'm not here to be your buddy.
McCarthy. And you, to your credit, you got in on the joke. I mean, what was it like to watch that?
Well, first, I would just say that Melissa's an unbelievably talented actor.
She's very good.
I grew up in Rhode Island, in a small town in Rhode Island, with a really tight-knit family. And we weren't politically involved. And I know you talk about this in Settle for More. I mean, like, I was going to Washington to fulfill my dream of getting a job on Capitol Hill, but that's all I want. I mean, that was like my goal. And then I go through this entire journey that I lay out in the book and have the honor of doing so many other things, working for the Republican Party, serving in the United States Navy for 19 years. And then I find myself not only standing at a podium, which, I mean, I was in 8th grade and we took pictures outside the White House gates. So I'm thinking, like, hey, that's a pretty cool, I wonder if I can get a tour.
Hey, Buttercup, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Yay, Buttercup. Let me get you some food.
And it's, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, the idea to stand behind that podium is, it's surreal. It's an honor that I never, I mean, it literally was my American dream.
But the other thing about you is
McCarthy do that and be part of
the history.
Just the history that's in this building.
The other thing about you is you've done a lot for Republican politics, and I think the book does a good job of laying out how the RNC, where you worked before going to the Trump campaign, really set Trump up for success in mobilizing the voters and so on like that. They were sort of the unsung heroes, if you're a Republican, of helping Trump with his electoral victory. Can I just ask you, so if you look at Trump on paper, his policies have been very good for Republicans. They've been very strong for Republicans.
Absolutely.
From the judicial appointments to the tax cuts to the rollback of regulations. It's his character and these things that we've been discussing that get him in trouble. But what do you think about the media and its zeal to cover this president's problems versus how they covered our last president, who also had some problems of his own?
Look, I want to be very clear about this. I think a healthy and robust press corps is essential to a democracy. I write in the book extensively that there are some extremely talented reporters that cover the White House and cover politics. And that's the model that we should follow. They are tough and tenacious. They fight hard for the truth. And I didn't like every story that most of them wrote. But I always felt as though they did a good job and they were straight about how they covered it. I think too often, though, now we find members of the press corps that take to Twitter to comment on everything, to focus on palace intrigue, to make the briefing about them. They all want to try to get their 15 minutes of fame.
And they've lost all objectivity.
And I think that's and I try to lay out in the book some constructive criticism of both sides, saying here's where elected officials and government and government officials can be better at working with the press corps. But I also think that there's areas where the press corps can be better. Savannah Guthrie herself, in a July 2017 interview on MSNBC, talks about how, you know, we shouldn't make a mountain out of molehill in every tweet. And every
well, that's what we do. People get the vapors in response to every tweet he issues. And honestly, if they had done that for prior presidents, it might be more interesting. But they have a special place in their hearts for President Trump. Well, whatever. But I think there is a legitimate case to be made that the media clearly leans left. But there's also one to be made that this president deserves more scrutiny, given the number of falsehoods he spews on a daily basis. That's just the case. I'm going to steal the last word. The book is well worth your time. It's very honest, and I love your background and your family. It's called The Briefing. It comes out on Tuesday. Check it out. Good luck, Sean.
Thank you.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.
We're absolutely fucking not. But we did have to get out some of those weak links, I said to Rolex. We did have to get out some of those weak links.
Megyn Kelly is here with us to talk about her new book. It's called Settle for More. Is that not a great title or what? I think it's fantastic. Says a lot in 3 words. Settle for More is a memoir, and The one thing I can say with some assurance being in the book business is that there's an art to writing a memoir. And there's an even more of an art to writing a good memoir, and there's even more of an art to writing a great memoir, because it has to tell the truth, it can't pull any punches, and most of all, the author must be willing to expose some of their own blemishes and vulnerabilities to explain who they are and what they're about. And let me just say, Settle for More is a great memoir. It's a great, great memoir. Megan takes us through her childhood in upstate New York, through her career as a successful corporate lawyer, her decision to abandon that life for a risky new venture, and her evolution in her roles as a professional woman, a spouse, and a mother. Along the way, she takes a deeply critical look at herself, including some personal demons that she had to tame as she searched for personal fulfillment and professional success. And one other very important point about this book, it is really, really funny. Actually hilarious in places. Megan has an incredibly quick and acerbic wit, which may explain how she survived some of the very challenging environments she's had to work in and some of the very contentious people she has covered. I'm not mentioning any names. Now, you all know that there is much more to Megan's story than I've just outlined, especially what she's been through in the past 18 months. Megan, if it's any consolation, I don't know how many of you have been following the local news about Pizzagate and the 5,000 block of Connecticut Avenue where Politics and Prose is located. We know a little thing or two about the real consequences of fake news stories. And we are with you. We haven't experienced half of what she has. But anyway, to help us get to the heart of her book and her story, we're very lucky to have with us another superb broadcast journalist, Katty Kay. Katty's well known here in Washington and beyond. She's the Washington anchor for BBC World News America. I'm sure many of you have seen her on MSNBC's Morning Joe and NBC's Meet the Press. We're delighted that Katty will be in conversation with Megan tonight. Please join me in welcoming these two exceptional and extraordinary women.
You must feel like a rock star.
That was fun.
Can we just carry on like that all night and have an hour of applause?
I know, let's rerun it. Let's just re-rack that. That's how we're opening the Kelly File tonight.
Yeah, there's so much, criticism and negativity around. To walk into a room where everyone loves you is so great.
I was just saying on the show last week that this book tour has been the opposite of the internet.
It's all real people. Thank you all for coming on winter's Monday night in Washington. And I know the traffic is hell because Rock Creek is shut. So we're especially appreciative that you've joined Megan and I here. I know Megan, so full disclosure, we're friends. And it's a real treat for me to have the chance to sit and talk to her for an hour. I've got your questions too, and I will throw them in randomly during the course of the evening. I read Settle for More over the course of the weekend. It's great. It's beautifully written. It's funny. It's honest. I have to admit, Megan, when I was first asked to do this, I thought, how does somebody of your age write a memoir?
Yeah.
You're just, starting in life.
Well, there's a story to that. There's a story to that because originally I was going to write a book about this segment I do on the Kelly File called Cupcake Nation. When we see the wussification of America and we see these millennials who can't function if they've suffered any sort of offense. And it really gets under my skin. And so I called.
That is a good thing or a bad thing? Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Call them Cupcake Nation.
Settle for More is a memoir, and the one thing I can say with some assurance being in the book business is that there's an art to writing a memoir. And there's an even more of an art to writing a good memoir, and there's even more of an art to writing a great memoir. Because